There is some space on the stage if anybody wants a seat. If you want to come round and sit down there, you're all very timidly looking like you don't want to. Okay, welcome to the 2026 election hustings for Deputies of St Mary, St Ouen and St Peter, which is coming from St Ouen's Parish Hall. I'm Gwyn Garfield-Bennett, and I'd like to make you aware that we are being live streamed to YouTube, and if you're watching from home, you can use closed captions. This will also be put as a recording on the vote.je YouTube channel and on the website. I'm going to keep this intro brief because I want you to get as much out of this as possible. Please check your phones are all on silent. We just had a nice little reminder there, because otherwise you'll disturb proceedings. As I'm sure you know, you can vote for 3 of the 6 candidates that you have before you. Candidates have decided to draw a ballot to decide on their seating and order of speaking. So I'd like to introduce you, starting from my right, Russell Labby, Helen Evans, who's Reform Jersey, all other candidates are independent, David Benn, Arlene Maltman, Chris Rebendane, and Lucy Stevenson. We're going to start with a short speech from each of the candidates. These will all be strictly times in the interest of fairness. The candidates have decided not to have any bell warnings, so I'm just going to shut them down straight away. And they're going to start off with 4-minute speeches initially. And we're going to go first to Russell Labby.
Thank you very much. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you all for coming. A full house for our 4th and final hustings of this election. And, well, there's one promise I'm going to make you. 24 hours after the polls close, all my posters will disappear. I thought you'd like that. I've really enjoyed going door to door and meeting as many of the parishioners as I possibly can. Cost of living comes up very frequently. I think the problem is deeper than just that. Middle Jersey is working harder and being squeezed from every side. Middle earners are not rich, they don't qualify for help, and they're the backbone of our economy, and many of them are just 1 or 2 bills away from real financial pressure. St Ouen's, St Mary and St Peter, 3 parishes thrown together to form a constituency, but 3 parishes with a lot in common. We share the same shops, don't we? We shop in the same places, we drive the same roads, we are inconvenienced by the same roadworks, we swim and surf in the same beautiful bays, and we share some of the most beautiful and unspoilt countryside in the island. We also share some of the same challenges. Today, 2026, the green zone, the backdrop to our lives, is under threat. 9,000 solar panels on good agricultural land in St Mary. St Ouen and the fragile coastal national park is subject to a stream of inappropriate planning applications. The PFAS issue, against which the brave residents of Montelabroon have fought the government so hard and highlighted for all of us the dangers of this forever chemical. And a new island plan to be written in the next 4 years. These are the live issues I think your deputies working together should take on. That is not to say that we shouldn't build new homes for our families and those who want to right-size. Of course we should, we are, and we must, but in the right places. So if you were to ask me, what will I do for St Ouen? My answer is, protect it. Thank you for listening.
Would people like to come in from the doorway? Do you want to come into the room from the doorway? I know some people just stuck outside there, can't see. You want to come, if you come round to your left here, there's space along the wall. Just making sure we can see. Okay, thank you. Next up with a speech, Helen Evans.
Good evening, and thank you all for coming out in such large numbers this evening. It's wonderful to see so many people here. I am standing a deputy for St Mary, St Ouen and St Peter as a candidate with Reform Jersey because I believe that I have the skills to be an effective States member representing you, the people of this part of the island where I grew up and where I now live. So firstly, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I have a fairly varied professional background. I initially trained as a teacher and I taught mathematics for a few years in schools in Cambridgeshire and Hertfordshire in England. I then left teaching. I retrained as an accountant at the UK National Audit Office, often described as the public sector watchdog, where I gained considerable experience of the management of public money within the United Kingdom by working both on audits of central government entities and on a variety of consultancy pieces of work and value for money studies. After I qualified, I moved to a top 10 firm in London where I worked in the public sector group, where we did mainly audits of grant-funded projects funded by the United Nations and the European Union in a variety of places worldwide. So there I gained further experience of such matters as procurement in the public sector and the funding of large capital projects. And I also got an insight into a variety of different organisations that we were working with, including both private businesses of various sizes and charities. I returned to Jersey in 2018 to work in the finance department at Ports of Jersey. I left that job ahead of the 22 election because I knew I wanted to stand as a candidate and I didn't feel I could sensibly stand as a candidate while on temporary leave from Ports. Since then, I have worked full-time as an associate lecturer for the Open University, teaching mainly mathematics and statistics to students on a variety of degree pathways, including those in data science and economics. So that tells you a little bit about me and why I think I have skills that would be of benefit to the island as a States member. The next question in people's minds may be, why am I standing with Reform Jersey? That may not be the most obvious choice in this district. The reason I'm standing with Reform Jersey and not as an independent is that ahead of the 22 election, when I'd originally been intending to stand as an independent, I looked quite closely at the work of the States Assembly. And from that, I came to the conclusion that I could be the most effective States member that I could be and represent constituents most effectively as a member of Reform Jersey who work so effectively together to achieve more than they could as individuals. Those achievements over the years have included things that were once quite controversial when bringing down the cost of GP appointments by increasing the government subsidy was first put forward as a reform policy. Almost no one else supported it. Now the vast majority of States members are on board with it and we've done it. We'd like to go further on that. We've also shown our ability to work cooperatively in a coalition government with independents, in which we've increased childcare subsidies for 2- and 3-year-olds, and Sam Meswick, as Housing Minister, has brought in the First Step scheme. If elected, I would work with my Reform colleagues and other members of the Assembly to address the cost of living, prepare Jersey for the challenges of the future, and restore accountability to government. Please consider giving me one of your votes on the 7th of June. Thank you.
David Ben.
Good evening, and it's wonderful to see so many people here tonight. St Owen's is always the very best parish hall to be in. Good evening, and thank you for being here tonight. I'm standing with the same enthusiasm and energy as I had 4 years ago when I was so very nearly elected. Brought up in St Ouen, I now live in St Peter, and part of my farm was in St Mary, so I have a very strong bond with this constituency. I was chairman of the Jersey Farmers Union Potato Committee, chaired many subcommittees, and I was a director of the Jersey Producers and Merchants Organisation, and I strongly represented my industry. I've served in both the St Ouen and the St John Honorary Police, and I'm a trustee of the charity Mustard Seed. I'm a board member of the Société Gérieuse, and also of the Jersey National Park, much of which, of course, is in these 3 parishes. We need to do better for this and future generations. Government spending is far too high, and the workforce is too big. Only by long-term planning and clear decision-making can we reverse this trend and prevent future generations from being left with debt and insurmountable problems. While backing the finance sector, we must see our tourism industry enhanced, as it has so many added on benefits, and continue strong support for our farming and fishing sectors. Essentially, we must reinvigorate our economy by actively seeking and supporting new opportunities for business with our near and far neighbours. AI is impacting and will replace many jobs in finance and other sectors. By enhancing Highlands, embracing AI, people can retrain and our young can learn new skills and apprenticeships, fulfilling new opportunities created by entrepreneurs who can be aided by reducing red tape and faster planning. By doing this, we can retain more of our young people. We must reduce the cost of living by increasing the tax threshold, reducing fuel duty, harbour dues and freight costs, increasing childcare provision, encouraging local food production, and ensuring that income support is appropriate. Looking to the future, we must ensure our energy and our food security, as this is almost non-existent. We must increase the housing stock for our young families using new techniques that reduce heating and electricity costs significantly and help them to buy homes. Our environment is a major asset. It is essential to preserve all good agricultural land for its intended purpose and prioritise reducing PFAS levels in our water. We have great frontline services which we must increase in some areas, for example, mental health and autoimmune care. With the increasing age of our population, we must encourage both physical and mental health to prevent a serious imbalance which is looming in the very near future. Through supporting sports, physical recreation, community and culture, we can increase well-being, promoting good health as we age, thereby reducing the cost of care while increasing the quality of our lives. We must continue and perhaps increase our support for the charities that enhance the care for those in need, as well as treating in-family carers with far greater respect. We live in a wonderful island with an incredibly diverse and multi-talented population, so let's work together collaboratively for a bright, healthy and prosperous future. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Arlene Maltman.
Good evening. I am delighted to end the parish hustings in my home parish of St. Ouen. And standing at the top of Montmathieu the other evening watching the sunset, I couldn't imagine living anywhere else. I grew up in St. Ouen's, and many of you know me for my competitive surfing achievements. I've been president of the Jersey Surfboard Club, and I now sit on the GB Olympic Surfing Board, which supports grassroots surfing in the island. I'm a big believer in the value of sport, from pétanque, which creates community spaces, to the triathlon, which attracts visitors from all over the world. My career has been in marketing and communications. I've studied in America and worked in ad agencies in New York. Back in Jersey, I've worked in the private and public sectors, including in the government cabinet office for 6 years. I'm committed to keeping the rural identity of our 3 parishes. St. Ouen's is an environmentally important landscape, and we must protect our biodiversity. It's what makes our island breathe. I've knocked on doors and sat at the splash talking to young voters. The message is clear. We must protect all of this and balance it carefully with islanders' needs. And as we face cost of living pressures, I want to support businesses in the parishes, our farm shops, our guest houses, cafes, and campsites. We need continued investment in destination marketing so that we can attract more of the right visitor demographic. Our businesses support jobs, invest in our people, and strengthens our community. And the Rural Economic Framework has brought new energy and investment into the sector. I'm keen to support this, helping a generation who value growing our local produce. You have told me you want it easier to convert properties into multi-generational homes. Planning changes must be easier and more affordable. You have told me you want better cycle and walking paths, and I'd like to see the introduction of a hopper bus which connects all 3 parishes to local amenities, the beach and the Enid Kenno Centre. And we all want our young people to stay in the parish, and so I support shared equity schemes and sympathetic development in the parishes. There are hard decisions to be made too. Government spending needs to be cut, projects prioritised, and waste cut. An investment in digital technology to automate activities and make government more efficient and more accountable. We're an ageing population, and we must grow our long-term care fund so that it will have enough money to put aside to care for our sick and our elderly. And the next island plan will be key to striking the balance of protecting our environment with the demands of new homes and infrastructure in our rural parish. It will be one of the biggest political decisions for the rural parishes and requires your voice to be heard. And on that, communication is key. And if elected, I will make communication a priority so that you are kept informed and that your voices are heard. Thank you.
Chris Rebindane.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out on this blustery evening to hear why I want to represent you in the States Assembly and the experience I can bring to the role. Whilst in my childhood I spent many happy hours at Greve de Lec and Plemont Beaches, St One is the one parish in this district where I have not lived. But I have spent time getting to know parishioners to understand their concerns. I spent 40 years in the finance industry. I'm professionally qualified. I've worked at a senior level, both in Jersey and internationally. I then moved into public service and spent 5 years working for the Attorney General and his Economic Crime Unit. I understand the importance of the finance industry into Jersey, and just as importantly, the challenges it faces on the global markets. Last week, I heard an interview with economic commentator Jim O'Neill, formerly of Goldman Sachs. He's advised governments on the Northern Powerhouse project. And he said something simple but profound. Governments can only control 3 things: what they spend, what they borrow, and what they tax. And currently, ladies and gentlemen, in Jersey, we are spending too much, we are borrowing too much, and we are taxing too much. And it must stop. If you elect me, I will take that message to the Assembly. I will use my vote to represent your concerns so that when others wish to spend more, tax more, and borrow more, I will have to be saying no to that one. The cost of living crisis will not ease until the government finances return to a surplus and the tax burden falls below 20% for the majority of taxpayers. Government must commit to a 4 years of disciplined spending reduction, and it must start now. My plan to re-energise a healthy Jersey rests on 4 pillars. First, healthy finances. Government must live within its means, reduce unnecessary expenditure, and focus on doing less but doing it better. Next, a healthy economy. Jersey needs fewer regulations, not more. Tourism requires genuine investment and connectivity, and we should be engaging with our local industry experts to work out how we revive our visitor economy. And healthy land and water. Agriculture and fisheries must continue to be revitalised. The island plan needs simplifying, and the DFDS contract has got to be fixed. We are an unhappy customer, and it cannot carry on like this. Finally, a healthy population. We must build the acute hospital, but also train nurses and medics to run it. Our children's health needs urgent attention, with obesity levels higher than UK averages. And I want areas for sport and outdoor activity accessible to all islanders. I'm not just about the money, but without sound finances, the things we truly need become unaffordable. At election time, candidates often say yes to everything. But the words you should want to hear is, this is how it will be funded. Because that shows seriousness and clear understanding that your candidate hears your concerns about overspending. So we will not spend £120 million of taxpayers' money on Fort Regent on my watch. We should not have had months of disruption and vast cost for a bus lane on the Esplanade just to shave a couple of minutes off a journey. We should not be plundering the Social Security Fund. We are Jersey, small, resourceful, prudent, and we need to regain that spirit. I hope you will vote for me on Sunday the 7th of June. Thank you.
Lucy Stevenson.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. For the past 4 years, I've had the privilege of being one of your deputies. I'm an independent candidate and I live here in St. One with my husband and our 3 children. And before entering politics, I spent 13 years at the JEP as an assistant editor, a political correspondent and a journalist. And I was first inspired to stand for election because I wanted to see more compassion in politics. And I wanted to see our government making meaningful connections with islanders. And that still stands for me today. This last political term has not been without its challenges. We've had 2 governments and there has been a great deal of delay and disruption as a result of that change in leadership. But it has allowed me to learn quickly, first as an assistant minister in government and then on the backbenches as a busy member of scrutiny. And those experiences mean that I'm ready to hit the ground running if I am re-elected. And that's a very good job because there's an awful lot to do. So my vision is for a community which works together at parish, constituency and island level to build a happier, healthier, more resilient population, making Jersey an even better place to live, work, bring up children, invest and do business. We need to find sustainable solutions to some long-term challenges which for too long I think have been left in the too difficult pile, carefully balancing the increasing need for fiscal prudence with our responsibilities to deliver for islanders and to protect our environment for future generations. And government should be working as an enabler, creating and nurturing environments for business, charities and individuals to thrive. So my manifesto focuses on 5 interconnected areas: a strong and vibrant economy which works for the people, the cost of living, building healthy and happy communities, future families, and long-term sustainable decision-making. I've focused on realistic, meaningful commitments that I know I can deliver as an independent candidate regardless of what position I end up in if I am re-elected. Key commitments include a temporary 10p per litre cut in fuel duty to mitigate soaring prices, increasing investment in preventative health from 2% of health spending to 6%, a birth rate task force to tackle the barriers for those who want to start or grow their families locally, ensuring a fair deal for islanders who've achieved a full social security contribution record prior to reaching pensionable age to ensure they're not forced to overpay for no added benefit, and working with the 3 parish connotabs to strengthen our local communities and protect our countryside and coastline, including our iconic bays of St. Owen's Bay, Grevdalec and Plemont. It's the role of a deputy to represent the interests of constituents in the States Assembly and to work with them on individual and local issues. And good relationships with the connotabs and parishes are vital. Future developments of homes are planned in all 3 of our parishes, and the next States Assembly is expected to consider the next island plan, which will set planning policy and rezone land into the future. Our parishes collectively account for 28% of Jersey's land and significant stretches of our coastline, and your representatives will have an important role in ensuring your voices are heard during that process. Speeding and road safety, parking for the parish school, bus connectivity to Llankeneve and the Enid Kenno Centre, and mains, drains and water connections have all been reoccurring themes when speaking to parishioners here in St. One.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're looking pretty crowded around the door. If anybody wants to squeeze in alongside here or sit down on the stage, please do come in. You look a bit squished over there. Okay, time to open up for questions. A microphone is going to be passed around, thankfully. Emelita has kindly volunteered. Questions must be brief. I don't want political statements from anybody. That's for these guys on this table. They must obviously not be offensive in any way, and they must able to be answered by every single one of the candidates. We are prioritising parishioners in St. One, so if you would kindly say your name and the area that you'd come from or live in. There'll be no questions allowed by candidates or existing States members. I'll take one question from each person to start off with, and if we get more time before our 9 p.m. finish, then I can obviously give people a second bat at the chance. Candidates are going to have 2 minutes to answer 2 questions, so I'm going to take 2 questions now, and of course I will be strictly timing it again. A very keen person here in the front.
Thank you. Is it working? Yes. My name is Richard Buchanan. I live in St. One's. I'm sure we've all noticed the Gulf War that's going on at the moment. We think we have had a cost of living crisis, but I can assure you it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. 20% of the world's oil supply is blocked, and worse than that, the fertilizer from the Middle East has not reached the markets. So Jersey is going to be facing a huge cost of living crisis.
What's your question, please?
Yeah, I'm just getting to it. So would the candidates please like to outline what they will do to offset this if they get into office?
Offset basically global problems. Thank you. Who else would like to ask a question? The lady there in the middle in the blue jumper, if you can reach her.
Olive Thomas, Clo Morel.
Sorry, could you put the
Yeah,
microphone
sorry.
close? That's it.
Chris, you've already answered this question, but you say 120 million. The last time I read it was 140 million for Fort Regent.
So what are we referring to?
Pardon? Fort Regent refurbishment. So I don't know. But what I'd like to just ask, with a yes or a no answer, please. Do you agree with borrowing that amount for Fort Regent refurbishment?
And what was your name again, sorry?
Olive Thomas.
Olive, and you're St. One.
Yes.
Okay, so the 2 questions are, what are candidates proposing to do about, obviously, the global issues in relation to what's going on with the war, and also, do you agree with borrowing a large amount of money to sort out Fort Regent? And the question's going to first go to Russell.
Richard, first thing I do is reduce the AMPO duty on fuel. There's a direct correlation between freight costs and the cost of the food in our supermarkets and other goods. And our freight costs and harbour dues have gone up. Not only that, DFDS have introduced a flat rate for imports and exports, so there's no discount on volume, it's a flat tonnage rate. I think we need to talk to or lean on DFDS and Ports of Jersey to reduce freight costs and freight charges and harbour dues. Fort Regent. It's difficult in a one-word answer. My inclination is no, not at the moment. And I'd certainly like to see what is planned for Fort Regent. I think the big problem that government is finding difficulty in answering is what is Fort Regent for now? And I do not think government is particularly good at running leisure centres, and it shouldn't be run by the government. It needs to be a private-public partnership of some kind, and we need to be sure that we know what we're doing and stop the endless reports nearly every 2 years costing a fortune and sitting on the shelf.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I'll take the second question first because you asked for a yes/no answer. My answer would be yes, just to go slightly beyond the yes/no answer. I think we need to avoid backtracking on decisions, and I think we also need to accept that we need sometimes to make bold decisions on investment. Failure to deal with sites and buildings in government ownership and leaving them derelict for years is a long-standing problem in Jersey, and it's done us no good at all. To come to the first question, I'm very glad you raised this, because it's a very important point that we in Jersey are at the mercy of a lot of forces beyond our control, and this is a fairly extreme case of that. And sadly, I think you're right. I think we can expect the next 4 years to be harder than the last 4 years, I'm afraid. Not what anyone wants to hear from anybody, but I think that's the reality, and we need to be honest about that. My priority with my party will be to ensure that where we offset things, we do so in a way which does not increase inequality within society and serves rather to reduce it. We've said in our manifesto in the short term that we would offset increasing prices in fuel duty by reducing the in fuel costs by reducing the duty on that to offset the increased prices. Because of course if you don't do that, you get a windfall to the Treasury in terms of additional taxation over and above what you budgeted for. So that's one thing we're quite clear about. Beyond that, I think it's hard to be specific because we don't know how the situation is going to evolve, but we do need to ensure that if, as is sadly likely, we experience hard times, whatever measures we take, we put in sufficient protection for the poorest people in society who most need help.
Two very good questions. Richard, to answer yours first, as a farmer, I do listen to the farming programme at 5:45 in the morning. I know you all do. It's quite alarming, actually, and we're on camera, so I won't say too much, because it really is alarming, food-wise, what is coming. Australia is not going to drill half as much grain as it normally does. The UK farmers can't afford fertiliser, as much fertiliser as they usually use, and it's doubled in price since this time last year, and it will go up even more. So food production is going to be very difficult. Fortunately, most people in this island can afford increases in food, but it's going to go up a lot. You'll remember from my opening speech that I said food security is very poor in this island. It is. It's appallingly poor, and we do need to look at food security and have some stocks. The government should be involved in that. We do need to reduce tax on fuel. We need to reduce the freight costs, and of course the harbours very kindly put up the harbour dues as soon as DFDS got their contract, which was a ridiculous thing to do. So that needs to come off. And of course we can produce more food locally. I know we have a fantastic Jersey Royal industry and a good cattle industry, but there are fields that are no longer being used because they're marginal. Hopefully we can use those and produce food locally so that it will at least provide us with food, but of course that won't necessarily be cheap because we don't have large-scale production. On the Fort Regent matter, I'm afraid there's a lot of misinformation going around about this. At the moment, we are between 40 and 50 million to put it back into order because there has been an enormous lack of foresight and planning, and we haven't maintained it over the years. I'm sure you, like me, enjoyed Fort Regent when we had our children, and it was a fantastic place.
Thank you. Sorry, time's up.
It's not going to cost that.
Thank you, Richard, for your question regarding the global economy. And yes, it's truly a bit of a frightening scenario. Candidates have mentioned the short-term levers, which I think we can, as a government, utilise. So fuel costs. So retailers have reported a 4% increase due to the flat rate card. So I think we desperately need to review that and again look at our food security. I've already spoken to one islander who's looking at ways of using our seaweed for fertiliser. So this is precisely the kind of innovative thinking that we need in government to tackle these big problems. In terms of Fort Regent, yes, I've come out to support the regeneration of Fort Regent. The health minister said the other day there have been 19 reviews of Fort Regent. You know, it's by time we stop kicking this one down the road. Money has been put aside in the Capital Investment Fund, 40 million to start taking out the asbestos. From there, let's look at a joint partnership with private enterprise so that we can generate income, so that we can give businesses a place to operate, we can get our young people in there, and we can open it up to the visitor economy so that it actually generates income for us and doesn't become one of those white elephants that sit on the hill for all of our visitors to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. I won't offer to change US foreign policy because I don't think I've got much control over that. The fuel one, I saw today that the government's getting £500,000 a month extra from fuel duty just because of the hike in price. So I think as we're all basically in consensus here that the government needs to give some of that back to us. In terms of DFDS and ports and whatever, one of the things I'm getting rather agitated about is our inability to control the 100% owned, what they call ALOs, so the arm length organisations. Ports of Jersey is one of those. We need to decide what its role is, because it's a public amenity, because without it, nobody has access to the island by sea. Does it need to make a profit? I don't think so. So we need to control its pricing mechanisms. You could say the same about the JEC in terms of how it prices for electricity. And I think there are ways that we can control some of the prices if the government utilises its 100% share ownership on these things, whereas currently they sort of leave it at arm's length, and I'm not sure why. Farmers are patently saying the fuel prices are 2 times, 3 times what they were in January. They're not going to be able to sustain that for very long. So that's probably an emergency meeting with all the farmers to sit down and see how we can resolve that. In terms of Fort Regent, I think you've got my answer. Sorry to spike your question. But just to clarify slightly, some of you may know my father ran tourism for 30 years, 60s, 70s, 80s. We were chock-a-block with holidaymakers. We had 1 million coming in every single year. And at that point, Fort Regent made a loss. And it had to be sustained by lottery money. So I don't see the point of revisiting that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Richard. As I said in my opening speech, I support a temporary 10p reduction in the fuel duty, and I will have a proposition ready to go if I am re-elected on that. As other people have said, government is bringing in money on the higher rate at the moment, and I've costed it up that it would cost about 1.5 million for a 6-month 10p reduction. 9p from that goes into the climate emergency fund, so that is always an option to say we just won't contribute to that for the 6 months. So it is a costed proposal as well. I agree with reviewing the flat rate freight card as well, as others have said, and I think government's response with working with the farmers so far on fertiliser and fuel issues has been encouraging. They've been responsive, and they have changed the rural support scheme to allow that to be widened in response to it. That's positive, and I'd like to see that kind of thinking and collaborative work with government continuing. Heating is going to be more of a challenge as we come into winter, and that's one that I don't have particularly an answer to at the moment, but we know that's coming at the moment. It's okay to be watching and waiting, but so far it's not coming down the costs. Fort Regent currently stands as a beacon of dithering and delay and governments and states' assemblies' inability to look after its properties over many years. I think it could stand as a beacon of hope, actually, moving forward. I do support the regeneration of it. I would like to see some sport back up there as well. Of course, 40 million, as others have said, has been costed. The rest of it, the next States Assembly will have to decide where that money's coming from, whether it's borrowing, what those solutions are. I think we need to come at that with a fresh slate. I'm open to considering borrowing if it is affordable. But really, I was lucky enough to open the skate park and saw that was a beacon of hope for people, and I'd like to see us recreate that.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions. Do you want to come in from the outside? I don't see people in the doorway. You're okay. Okay, lovely. Who else has got a question then, please? Somebody at the back there, and then another person here in the green. Please state your name and that you're from St. One, please.
My name's Basil Carey, a geriatric living at Portafe. I've been rather concerned over the last 4 years the quality of politicians that we've had. Most of those who have ministerial jobs have only been there for their own pet projects. We have seen so many errors being made when you see an assistant minister actually blocks a £120 million project, leaving a site empty. It makes you wonder the quality of politicians.
Okay, what's your
With
question,
the reinstatement of senators in the States, shouldn't they have the Senate ministerial jobs? And I'd like the candidates' views on that.
So should senators take the ministerial jobs? Okay. And we have another question down here, the second row, the gentleman in the green. Thank you, Melita.
Thank you. Richard Romrell, St. One. Okay. So, given the controversy around Value Jersey, can each candidate state their position and thoughts on the Value Jersey movement? And if they are elected to office, what actions, if any, they would propose to prevent a recurrence of this controversy in the next election?
Okay. Right, so their first question is, should senators take ministerial roles? And question about Value Jersey and the controversy around that that's been in the media. Helen.
Sorry, thank you very much. First question, you've expressed dissatisfaction with the quality of politicians generally and with those in ministerial posts over the last 4 years, and proposed that only senators, as I understand it, only senators should take ministerial posts. Now, there's certainly a very widespread view in this island that a senatorial island-wide mandate gives someone a strong basis for making it known they would like a ministerial post. And I think it's fair to say that many people outside my party who would like ministerial posts who were in the last assembly have stood as senator precisely for that reason. It's actually for the assembly to decide when it reconvenes, for the chief minister to decide who he or she puts forward as their pick of candidates for ministerial posts, and for the assembly then to vote on those and perhaps propose others. My prediction is we'll see what we've seen before. There's a presumption that all other things being equal, as a matter of priority, those with an island mandate would be considered first by most people for for ministerial posts. However, it's always possible that there may be candidates elected in the senatorials who people don't think were very suitable for ministerial posts, and candidates elected in deputy election for whom they do. So we'll see what happens on that, I think. The second question on Value Jersey. As a Reform Jersey candidate, I probably don't need to say that I personally have no association with Value Jersey. That's probably clear. It seems to be a mix of different things. In part a support network, which is fine. In part a body that put forward a manifesto that other people have endorsed, which is also fine, though both those raise questions about registration and political party. The election observers will look at any accusations currently being thrown around about dirty tactics in the election, whether it's Value Jersey or some other group of people behind those. We've been mercifully free from them in this district.
Thank you. Time's up.
Basil, thank you very much for your question. If you're dissatisfied with the current ministers and makeup of the government, then elect new people. It's quite simple. But I like the old system. Okay, we've got senators back, which is wonderful because it's an island-wide vote. But the old system, where there was continuity of 3 years and 3 years, so a senator was in for 6 years, was so good because there was continuity, and we've lost that, which is a great shame. Whether senators should be the ministers, I'm not sure, because I think the minister should be the very best person for the job, whether it's a senator, a deputy, or a constable. And we've seen some excellent constables in presidents, as it was then, as we have deputies. And if you remember, a long time ago, we had one man who didn't come back as a senator, he came back as a deputy, and he still ran the committee. You know, it's down to ability, not necessarily to what title you have. Value Jersey, I can assure you I've got nothing to do with Value Jersey. We haven't, as Helen's quite rightly said, we haven't seen any controversy with Value Jersey in our district, as far as I know. And I don't really know what's going on with Value Jersey, so I'm not too bothered about it.
Thank you, Basil, for your question about the role of senators taking ministerial roles. I agree with David, it should be based on merit. And I do think that the whole bringing back of senators has caused quite a lot of confusion for voters. And I'm hoping that this will settle. But quite frankly, I think it's quite difficult for people to understand the role of senators and how that differs to deputies. So I'm of the mind that when the Assembly meets and the Chief Minister chooses his or her cabinet, it will be merit-based. And that will include the mix of deputies and constables. And that's why I'm standing for election, because I want to make a difference. I want to be a new, fresh face. I want to come in with new ideas and a new perspective and represent the island for the next 4 years. In terms of Value Jersey, I'm an independent candidate. I'm not aligned to Value Jersey. I do understand some of their values, should we say, because they're the cost of living, a lot of those crossover. And I do understand that there's been some controversy about which the Electoral Commission are looking into. So I believe in transparency and openness and fairness.
Basil, thanks for your question. I guess my response to that is I want more ministers, and we won't have enough senators for the amount of ministers I want. I was talking to a former minister who's a very outspoken person in the press, who said to me, who on earth devised a government system where the government starts in a minority? It's just ridiculous. We need to utilise all the skills of the people who are being elected. So yes, I would assume most of those key positions will get taken up by the senatorial candidates, but I wouldn't want to dissuade anyone who has got elected from putting their hat into the ring if they felt they had something specific to offer in one of the things. Departments. But as I say, I'd like a tourism ministry. I think agriculture and sport and all of these things need proper representation, and not to all be bunched together in one department and 2/3 of those issues then get suppressed. In terms of Value Jersey, no, I am not part of Value Jersey. I am not aligned to anyone. David will actually confirm that I was chatting to Sir Philip Balash before several months back. So I have talked to people. Lots of the prospective candidates have all met in various guises, so we've all got chatting. But the reality is I wanted to stand as an independent in St Mary's, St Wands and St Peter because I believed that that's what you would want. So that is what I have done. In terms of what should happen after the election, I think the Electoral Commission is going to take a look at it. I don't know whether it's a state's issue that they should be running with. I think we will wait for the Jersey Electoral Commission to come up with their report. And I know there are independent observers who are taking a look at it as well. So I'm sure they'll be filing a report too. Thank you.
Basil, thank you for your question. As others have said, we typically see a government of up to 21 people under the Troy rule, so usually it does take more than the 9 senators to fill those roles. To me, the best person for the job. So we wait and we see who's elected, and then we move forward from there. Yes, I do think, senators they've got an island-wide mandate. I would certainly like to see our chief minister coming from the ranks of senators. I think that's justified. But usually it does take other people to make a government. I'd just add about assistant ministers actually as well, that they can be really useful in breaking down the silo working in government and actually move between departments and get things done and bring different ministers together, lead on different projects. So they can be really, really useful actually in that system and as part of that 21, having done it myself and experienced that. Richard, moving on to your question, I have no links with Value Jersey. I've never been to a meeting of Value Jersey. I have absolutely no problem with people working together, and particularly when we've got an proudly independent system in so many ways as well. Of course, we need to do that. But transparency and accountability are absolutely key for me. And I can only speak as an individual, but certainly I won't be voting for anybody where I'm not convinced that there is full transparency there. That's a personal decision for people to make. Going forward, I think it's important that the next PPC, Privileges and Procedures Committee, reflects on this experience of the election. It's not ideal that those things have to happen after the election, but we are where we are, as they say. I think there will be some learnings from it, absolutely.
Well, Basil, I've been watching the senatorial hustings online and hearing a lot of pledges to reduce spending, eliminate waste, cut red tape, be more accountable. The trouble is, those are the same promises that were made by ministers word for word 4 years ago at the last election, and it never happened. Now, because it's a senatorial race, we will be re-electing most, probably not all, but most of those ministers. Good for them, experience is good. But on the doorstep, I've been keeping a little mental opinion poll, and you're telling me you rather like Sir Mark Boliat, you like Alan McLean, and Serena Guthrie. Those are the top three. And I think they would be good. I think you're right, because they will challenge and they have ideas. Now, Serena is an out and proud member of Value Jersey, and I think that's good. And I think she'd be a terrific minister, along with the other two I've just mentioned. I think there are people connected with Value Jersey who are afraid to say it. They're in the closet, if you like, about it. And I think that's a dangerous thing to do, unwise, and a shame. But Basil, if you are saying you think all the senators should be ministers, I would just say be careful what you wish for on that.
Okay, another two questions, please. Yeah. Question on here.
Andrew Lewis.
Oh, from St. One.
From St. One's, yes.
Sorry. Just checking.
Grew up in St. One's, moved back recently. In March this year, the Association of Jersey Charities launched a pledge for election candidates to consider supporting. This pledge is not asking for more money, but it is asking for commitment to strengthen partnership between government and Jersey's charity sector to ensure that charities are valued, supported, and effectively utilised in delivering positive outcomes for islanders. This pledge has been shared with all candidates directly. My question to you all is, given the important role charities play in supporting islanders, have you signed up to this pledge? And if not, could you explain your reasons for choosing not to do so?
Okay, thank you. Another question? It's the lady here, in the just second row here in the blue flowery top.
Celia Jeanne, and I live in St. One. This is actually a question from my seroptimists. As women, we're very aware that there's still a huge gender gap in the island. It's wonderful tonight to see 3 ladies here and 3 gentlemen standing for the same posts. But on the whole, it's there's usually a gender imbalance. And I would like to hear from each of the candidates tonight what they think about gender balance and also particularly violence against women.
Okay, thank you. So the two questions are, have you signed the pledge from the Association of Jersey Charities about partnership between government and charities? And if not, why not? And what would you do about the balance in the gender gap across the island and violence against women? So gender pay gap particularly. Okay. So any gender imbalance effectively.
So first on the pledge, absolutely, I signed it immediately as it came in. We've had this question at all three hustings. I am a trustee of a charity, but if all of the charities decided they didn't have enough money to continue and close down tomorrow, our government could not afford to replace the work they do. It's absolutely essential that we keep... It's absolutely essential that we keep the charities going, and you'll remember from my speech that I did say I think we ought to give them more money. It came up last night in the senatorial hustings, and I think most supported that. But it's so important that we do, and you know, if we don't, we're in for very serious trouble. I've just actually been at a funeral this afternoon for a friend that died of motor neurone, and thank God there's a charity that supports people with motor neurone, because it's a horrible disease to die from. Gender imbalance. Actually, this is really great because I'm on the Société Gérie and the National Park. We have done our utmost to create a balance on both of those. I've recently brought in a new lady member of the National Park because she's enormously capable, and so we are still too many men, but we ought to, you know, hopefully in time we will get a good 50-50, which is tremendous because working with women is lovely. We have you know, they have a different view on things, and very often more sensible. But you know, it's good to work in a balanced situation, and yes, they ought to absolutely receive. All of my staff received exactly the same pay, whether they were man or lady, and that's going back a very long time. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, for your question. I have signed the pledge, and it came up at the Senator hustings yesterday, and my thoughts are aligned with some of that thinking, which I think there should be more support ministerially for the sector, and I support the work of the Charities Commissioner. Speaking to Patrick Lynch about the contribution that the third sector makes to our island, you know, we need to continue supporting all of our great charities on the island. On the gender pay gap, gender imbalance, this is a subject I'm very keen about, being one of the first female woman surfer on the island to kind of break through that glass ceiling in sport. So I'm very keen and very hopeful that I think we have closed that gap, and government has done work to ensure that the pay reflects the jobs that we do. We can't have men doing the same job as women but paid differently, for example. So I'm very keen to continue supporting that. And in terms of VOG, I support all the recommendations in that report, and I believe that the next government must be committed to reinstating those actions and not to cut the funding towards violence against women and girls. That's something that we must continue to do.
Andrew, the first two occasions I was asked that question, I was not able to go a definitive yes because I didn't know, but I had checked before, so yes, I have signed it. But more widely than that, I think the whole jet fiasco brought this whole thing to our attention, if it wasn't already there. And at times when everyone's talking about cost of living crisis and poverty, It is essential that this sector is adequately supported because it provides services to all of us, which actually, if offered by the government, would cost us way more and probably be far less efficient. So it is very important that we support JET and all the other charities that are providing these services. In terms of the gender gap, I'm struggling on this one, because the best colleagues I've ever had have been basically the women. I find that they are generally the most productive, the most helpful, the most thoughtful, and so from my particular perspective, I don't tend to see it. So I'm probably not the best person to comment, but I would say that a mix around the table is essential. Shouldn't have one or t'other in the majority. In terms of violence, I've worked recently for the Attorney General. I've been in the criminal team, and the amount of cases going through court is absolutely appalling. My colleagues are having to deal with them all day, every day, and they can't believe the volume that is coming through. As a society, we need to get on top of it, and prevention obviously is better than prosecution. So whatever we can do to support, we should. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, I've signed the pledge. I signed it almost immediately when it came in, and my manifesto also includes the commitment to recognise the vital role played by Jersey's charities and commit to strengthening partnerships between government and the third sector. And I note that I think in the last 24 hours we've had some figures to do with Volunteering Week, which I think referred to the volunteers giving 1,700 full-time jobs, the time equivalent, which I think is just incredible. In a small island like Jersey, where would we be without our third sector? So absolutely. Celia, moving on to your question, I could probably talk all evening about it. So it's difficult to know where to start. But first of all, I would say that I passionately believe that diversity around the decision-making table leads to better outcomes. That's in politics, in business, in life generally. On the gender pay gap, I think the figure that always stands out to me, it's something like 50-something years if we keep going at the pace we are to actually fully close that gender pay gap. My daughter will be on to her own children, perhaps even grandchildren by then, and to me that's not good enough. I think our past governments have been complacent on the subject, and personally I would support mandatory pay gap reporting. I sat in a scrutiny hearing where a former assistant chief minister who sat in the front row over there said before COVID, if we don't have X number of businesses voluntarily reporting, then we will bring in mandatory pay gap reporting. COVID then happened, there was a delay, and nothing's happened since. We're back to talking about voluntary reporting, which isn't good enough for me. The VORG report, I support the findings of that. I think there's some important things we need to do moving forward. Economic abuse is a big piece that hasn't really got started yet, to delve into that. We need the resources in the prison, justice and police service.
Time's up.
As I say, I could keep going all night, sorry.
Andrew, yes, I've signed the pledge, and I think this. Every year, charities have to apply for their grant from government. Every year. It's a laborious process, very time-consuming. It's inefficient for the charities and for the government, for civil service. So I would say that the beginning of a term, all the charities apply for their grants, and they will have certainty then for the rest of the term for 3 years, so they can plan properly ahead, and if there's a different or unexpected charge, they can go back to government. There should be a fund kept so that anything unexpected that comes up, charities can apply for a little bit more if they need it. I said before that government is no good at running leisure centres, and also government does not understand how to run a charity. Celia, when I was first elected to the States in 2014, I haven't been in there for the last 4 years, but I was elected in 2014, and in the Assembly, there are a lot of propositions that are brought to the full Assembly about the constitution of various boards. I don't know why it's coming to the full assembly. It's ridiculous, and that is an efficiency that could be made. And in 2014, a number of us were unhappy to look at the makeup of these boards and to see it was all men. One of them is standing at the back of the hall. I was one of them. And we started not voting for it. It was normally just a rubber stamp and it would go through. So we started not voting for it. And I think we even chucked a couple of them out. They had to go back and come back with a different board. And very soon after that, things changed, and no longer would boards be coming to the Assembly unless they were gender balanced. So I'm on your side, and all power to you.
Thank you very much. On the first question about charities, I have indeed signed the pledge, and I would recognise the important roles that charities play in the island. And I'd comment that that's charities engaged in a very wide range of activity, and also charities of a very wide range of size, some of which are seeking and receive government funding and need stability and security in that funding, some of which in fact are not in any way seeking government funding, but which still play, many of them very small, an important part in the fabric of our society. On the second question, about violence against women and girls and about gender balance. Firstly, on violence against women and girls, this is one of those things which unfortunately has been a hidden taboo in society for a very long time, and that's changing, and I would fully support the work that's been done on that. It is a very serious issue, and it's partly about changing culture, which is always difficult and takes time, so it's not an area where we can be complacent despite the recent work. On gender balance, I would fully support that, and I think we need to think more broadly than gender. It's about various other characteristics as well. We know, for example, disabled women are particularly underrepresented in many spheres. People of both sexes, but perhaps especially women who are not white, are underrepresented in many areas. So it's a very complicated issue, as is measuring a gap. I would just comment that it's interesting that we don't see a gender balance in the senatorial contest. Now, I'm not going to speculate here on how that is, but there are 3 women and 14 men standing for senator. So how that ties in with the earlier question on senators as ministers, I'll leave for you to ponder. But it's all very complicated.
Thank you. Thanks. Time's up. Okay, more questions, please. Gentleman there, check shirt. Sorry, Melita. You're having to jump up and down. Check shirt there. A third row in.
Good evening, my name is John Tarrant, I'm from St Wans. My question is about reduction of online harms, which may be predictable for some people. Jersey has a lamentable record on this, and I would like to know what you would either propose or support by way of reducing online harms for both children and adults. Please don't say just stopping social media for under 16s unless you go explain to me how you're going to enforce it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Another question? You're all being shy. Is there a question here on the...
Hiya, Gemma, St One. What's the most radical thing you would want to achieve if you were elected?
Okay, might be interesting. Thank you. Okay, so 2 questions are, what would you do about reducing online harms for both children and adults? And also, what's the most radical thing that you would like to do if you were elected? And the question's first going this time round to Arlene.
Thank you for your question about online harms. Clearly, this is a worry in our society, and it's something that happens in front of our eyes. I think that this has grown and grown and grown. I don't know what the solution is in terms of stopping it. Obviously, Meta and Facebook are massive organisations, And recently there's been a lot of court cases in the United States where Facebook has been taken to court. And, you know, I think that's very brave, and I think the more people can call these big companies to account to make differences to how we view online content. And, you know, you mentioned children and adults, and, you know, it happens to us all. I think, you know, as political candidates, we are also in a vulnerable position to that kind of rhetoric. So I think that's all I have to say on that one, really. Gemma, thank you for your answer. I haven't had a chance to think what's the most radical thing I would do if I was elected. But I think I would really like to shake up the government. I would like to see more energy in the civil service as far as thinking entrepreneur-wise, thinking about those major industries that we love, like tourism and sport and arts and culture especially. I'd love to get into the arts and culture department and just, you know, paint a great big mural down the side of Union Street just to say, you know, this is what we are, this is what kind of island we are, this is the kind of passion we have. Thank you.
John, it's one of those where we should all be very nervous talking to the man who knows more about the subject than the rest of us put together. The reality is, I think the problem is currently beyond most of us in the Western world to deal with, and we're so behind the curve it's untrue. You can see the way Australia's gone, and I'd like to see how that fares before we contemplate going down a similar route. I know there's a knee-jerk reaction to say, well, they've done it, we should do it, in terms of banning school kids from having access. I've just gone onto Facebook for the first time in my life. I went on 4 weeks ago. It's not a pleasant experience. I'm not doing very well at it, and I'm not quite sure why anyone does it, to be honest. As adults, I think we are possibly poor examples to our children, and I think we have to start there. I think parents have to own up to the fact that they've got to set an example to their children, and yes, it would be great if the schools can help with that, but the reality is it's going to have to start at home. I think it's an education thing, both for adults as well as the school kids. I'm sure there's more to it than that, but at the moment, that's as far as I could go. Gemma, crumbs. Okay. What I want to do is I would like the thing called People Hub, which is all the employment for all the states thing. I would like to take them away and explain to them the problems that they create when they can't deliver an employment contract within about a week. Because you wouldn't believe the amount of people who lose jobs having gone through the whole interview process and flown in from the UK.
Time's up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. So I support the recommendations that the scrutiny panel came to on their online harms review, and I think the biggest priorities for me out of that is actually coming up with a plan quite urgently about how Jersey's going to tackle this, and particularly plug the gaps in legislation that we have over here. I'm disappointed that Jersey didn't have the permissive extent clause, as Guernsey and the Isle of Man did, to bring the online harms bill over here as well. It means we've got even more catching up to do on something we're already behind the curve on, so there's an awful lot of work to do. To me, it's a partnership between parents, between schools, between the whole community. I'm a parent myself, and actually it can be really hard to be an outlier and have that pressure put on you of what other people are doing. So it's about how we work together to do that. I think the ban on mobiles in schools helps to draw a line. That's a really simple example of how that kind of decision can help parents as well. the manosphere is something that I almost got on to in my response to Celia, and that's something that does particularly concern me going forward about social media. And yes, a ban may not be the way forward. Can it be policed? I don't know. There's an awful lot there. Again, we could probably talk all evening about it, but that's a starter for 10, as it were. Radical idea from me is actually my policy about increasing investment in preventative health from 2% to 6%, which, when you look at the evidence, it's not radical at all. There is so much evidence out there about how this makes economic sense, as well as health and well-being and building strong communities. But actually, when you sit and listen to the debates in our States Assembly, we're quite a long way from even recognising the power of healthy eating, moving more, and actually how that can have so many benefits. So it is unfortunately radical, but I will work on that.
Yes, well, I agree with the previous speakers on this, John, and you, in terms of an under-16 ban on social media will not work. And it's ridiculous to ban technology. We should be using technology to make it better and safer. Well, I ran the body that runs the Assembly. I was the chairman of PPC for a couple of years. And I was quite radical. I even got the Assembly to agree to limit the amount of time they could speak to 15 minutes. And that was pretty radical at the time. And actually, I hear some candidates saying it should be shorter, but I also gave the bailiff the power to reduce the speeches even more. After a certain time of a debate, if people were saying the same things at length, which they do, he does have the power now to cut them down. He's not used it yet, I don't think. And if I had, what was the most radical? Well, I'd love to see a woman bailiff, by the way, Celia. I think probably, sensibly, I would continue with a radical efficiencies and modernisation of the states, the procedures of the Assembly. There's an awful lot that comes to it and takes a long time that doesn't need to. Now we have a ministerial government. I think every member should have the right to pull something into the Assembly if they feel it needs to be, but otherwise there's a lot of stuff that could just happen.
Thank you for both those questions. Taking the first one on online harms first, we do indeed have quite a lot of catching up to do. I think the scrutiny work that's been done in this area has perhaps guided the first steps of that. There are, broadly speaking, 3 pillars to this, I think. One is getting the right legislation in place. The second is getting the right enforcement in place, because there is absolutely no point in having legislation if you don't have both the mechanism and will to enforce it. It serves no purpose. And the third, which I hope would come alongside and follow on from the first 2, is a cultural change, and that needs to perhaps begin with and certainly include raising awareness of what is reportable harmful content. Because that is an important step in the process. On the second question about the most radical thing I would do, I like this question very much. In some ways, I think it's also a bit of a trap, because as I've gone around knocking on people's doors, a lot of people have said, you're just like all the others, you'll say you'll do this, that, and the other, but when you get in, you'll never do any of those things. And I understand where they're coming from, because it is actually difficult to bring about change as a States member, even if you're part of a party. Lasting, meaningful change tends to be slow and incremental. So I'm going to take radical in the true etymologic sense of the word, of going back to the roots. And I think one radical thing we do need in the States Assembly is to push to represent people and to govern entirely in the public interest. That is what States members are elected to do, not to act in their first interest, and in their own interest. And I think this also ties in fact, with the earlier reference to pet projects.
Thank you, Helen.
Get away from that.
John, on the online harm, this is a really, really serious problem. The thing is that educators can tell children, look, you must not go on your phones. These things are dangerous. You know, you're scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And they go home, Mummy, I mustn't go on my scroll. And Mummy's scrolling. And this is the problem. It's education. It's not only the children that are scrolling, it's mum and dad. And that's a shame, because it's not, how can you explain to your children that your telephone is harmful when the parents are doing exactly the same thing? I love to walk my dog on the dunes, and I see ladies walking around the dunes looking at, oh man, we're looking at their phone all the time. You know, that's ridiculous. You've got the beauty of the dunes. It's very, very addictive, and it's high time that we did something very serious about it otherwise, because people are being harmed mentally with it. And of course, you know, there are problems in schools with children who aren't getting the love at home that they should, because mum and dad are on their phones as well. So it's a massive problem, not only for children, it is also for adults. On the most radical thing, of course, I'd love everyone to speak Gaelic, but and of course we should, it's our language. But what I would really like to do is to take the States Assembly, shake them all into reality and say, look here, you've been promising for the last 3-4 generations of the Assembly that we must bring down costs. What are you doing? You're increasing them. We're not looking ahead, and the whole Assembly needs to get into reality and realise what we're doing for our children, our children, our grandchildren, and the following generations. We are spending far too much money, and we must bring that down, so we must be more radical about that.
Two more questions. Yep, gentleman here in blue and the lady in the front.
Hello, Gary Vibe, St Ones. At present, the hospital can't cope with its patients. Waiting lists are getting longer and longer, and we send all our trauma patients, a lot of the stroke patients, cardiac patients, all go to England. They go to the Oxford Radcliffe, they go to St George's, it's an hour's flight away. Yet, a 15-minute flight away is the top cardiac hospital in France, trauma hospital. What are your ideas on supporting a full reciprocal health agreement with France, where we can give our Jersey residents the best possible care in a lot shorter space of time?
Okay, thank you. And the lady here in the front as well, please, Amelita.
I'm Vicky from St One. My question is, I know there's been voting and a lot of discussion about assisted dying. How far are we, and how far can we go with palliative care? Because I feel there's a lot more to be done with palliative care than signing off with assisted dying.
Okay, thank you. So the two questions are hospital waiting lists. Will candidates consider supporting a French reciprocal health agreement so our patients can go to France and use their services and vice versa, obviously? And also assisted dying has been passed, but how far can we go with palliative care? Now that is going to go first to Chris.
Gary, great question. I'm trying to work out why we've got a Normandy office, because I don't see what connections we have with Normandy particularly. So you've said St Malo, yes, but there's Caen as well. And Caen is a teacher training hospital. They've got English-speaking wings, I gather. I think we should be looking south as much as north to get, not just healthcare, to be honest, lots of things. I'd like more freight coming in from France and all of that sort of thing. But in terms of healthcare, yes, I see no problem with utilising the French to help us. I'm told it's because people say the family links are such that people would prefer to be in the UK. I was literally stood on the doorstep with someone only last week who said, I don't care, just get me well. So if it's a French hospital, all well and good. So I'm perfectly open to that and think it would be a great idea. Assisted dying and palliative care, yes. I mean, we are so blessed to have Jersey Hospice. I think we probably all had experiences of being there and friends and family having to use it. It's one of those things that I don't think the Brits do very well. There's that great book that's been written recently about, I think it's called something like Dying Well or whatever, and we've got to get our heads around it. But assisted dying, I'm not a fan of, I have to say. I am Catholic by birth, so I'm reluctant. I would much prefer that we specialise in palliative care and everyone gets a good send-off. That would be my preference, and if we need to spend more money on that, I would agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Gary. One of the things that I really don't like is when, as politicians, we start by looking at the barriers and we always go in on the negatives first. But I'm going to break my own rule, because when you asked this question, the first thing I did was write down the things that were in my head, unfortunately, as barriers. And it's around language, about the standards that we have and the guidance that we use. We are wedded to many of the UK systems. The registrations that our clinicians use are UK-based, and the insurance schemes that they use are UK-based. So there are lots of barriers there. They're the things that spring to mind. I would be open to it being looked at if it was a viable option. My concern would be how much time and effort we put into trying to build that at a time when our health service is really struggling, and we need to be making decisions quickly and effectively. Vicky, on your question, the commitment has always been made in the States Assembly that palliative care will have the investment and priority that it deserves going forward. It should not be at the expense of assisted dying, as it were, and that's something we've been promised, and I stand by that and will continue to make sure that we push for that as well. It's the job of the next States Assembly and those afterwards to make sure that those commitments are followed through.
Russell?
Yes, I absolutely agree with reciprocal arrangement with France on health grounds, Gary, and like the others are saying, we should be looking south rather than north all the time. So anything we can do to work with France, I would support very much so. I mean, the question is about waiting lists, and it strikes me that if people are waiting 2 years for a hip replacement, don't we need another orthopedic surgeon? Wouldn't that speed that up? And why aren't we doing that? Is it because we can't get one? I do know of health professionals visiting the island for an interview at the General Hospital over the years, taking a look at the Gloucester Street property and whether the plans for a new hospital will ever materialise and when, and they've just turned around, gone home and said, no thank you, you can keep your job. So this hospital saga from 2012 to present day is an absolute stain on the reputation of our government and the Assembly. It's been a total disaster, and the ramifications for it are affecting health. In fact, we can't get the staff we need. So it's a serious issue, and somehow we need to analyse what went wrong, and it should never happen again. I mean, you know, I was quoting ministers from the last election 4 years ago. I'll spare his blushes, but one senior minister, bless you, said, we should only change the hospital plans, this was 4 years ago, if the project would be quicker and cheaper. Well, they did change the hospital plans, and believe you me, it's not being quicker, and it's definitely not being cheaper, and we still don't know the actual price of phase 2 and phase 3 of this hospital project, and the ongoing costs of a multi-site hospital.
Russell, that's your time up. Thank you.
Thank you. On the question about the hospital, I acknowledge waiting lists at the moment are clearly a problem, and I think there is work underway in terms of staffing to bring those down. So I'll focus mainly on the question about France. I'm afraid my answer to this, I think, with the possible exception of one or two things where timing of response is critical, no, we don't want to be looking to France to provide tertiary, quaternary healthcare referrals, because continuity of care is really important. We've always got a need for finance referrals. It's likely to increase. It's one of the main drivers behind the pressure to increase the health budget. But where you admit a patient and refer between consultants or from a GP to a hospital consultant, it is really important that those people are working with a shared understanding of what's going on and treatment. And the French medical system does some things differently from the English medical system. Quite apart from the language barrier, it is very difficult to ask consultants in Jersey to refer patients to a completely different medical system in which they have never worked and in which they didn't train. I don't really think it's viable from that point of view. The language barrier is also an issue, and of course the transport connections aren't really up to it either at the moment, though clearly they may be something we could fix. On the question about assisted dying and palliative care, the Assembly decided in favour of assisted dying. That is not a decision I would have voted for. I would personally have voted against. That aside, I think with or without assisted dying, and we voted for it, we need good palliative care, both in the hospice and in the community. And I was pleased to see as part of the assisted dying, the funding for that was increased somewhat. You rightly draw attention to the importance of palliative care. Thank you.
Gary, great question. Up until very recently, as you know, France was voted the best country in the world for hospital care and healthcare. I've been involved in it, in that a member of my family was in the oncology hospital down in Toulouse, and it was fine. Brilliant hospital, brilliant doctors. The problem was that the patient didn't understand what the nurses were saying, and the nurses don't speak English. They do speak more English further north, but I've actually been in a French hospital myself because I've lived in France, and they don't speak much English at all, but all of the doctors do. So I suppose the question would be, look, you've got a choice. Do you want to go to a French hospital or an English hospital? Do you speak French? Yes, I speak French. Let's go to France, because the care system is brilliant. Somebody mentioned hip replacements. There's a phenomenal hip surgeon in Pontivy with a tremendous reputation. So I would be for it, because why not? You know, what have we got to gain by being negative about it? Palliative care, absolutely. I wouldn't have voted for assisted dying, I'm afraid. The problem, of course, is that hospice care is full. As we know, there are a lot of cancer cases in the island, sadly, and hospice care is full, so there is more work being done in the community, but I would absolutely vote for that. I've got to be careful because a member of my family works there. There is every reason that everybody can be given, to a great extent, a very good ending if they do have a very serious problem. And the hospice care and their very, very highly trained staff can deal with it. So I'd be totally for that.
Thanks, Gary, for your question about reciprocal arrangements with France. Gosh, I'd like to just refer to Gemma's question. What a radical idea. And I feel that we're not quite ready for that kind of thinking when we haven't put a spade in the ground yet for the new hospital. We haven't completed the digitization of patient records. So, you know, I think that's a fantastic idea. We really need a holistic approach to healthcare, and I think that would be a very good idea to explore. On palliative care, thank you. We spoke briefly on the doorstep, and I would have liked to have spent a bit more time with you to understand a bit more about your views. I realise as part of the law being passed for assisted dying that 50% of costs are covering palliative care, and that's about 3 million, I believe. I think hospice needs a lot more investment in that, especially in the children's wing, and then really needs, again, this comes back to the charity sector. There needs to be a lot more communication with government to understand the needs of an ageing population, and so I think it's you know, we need to work in partnership to really support that part of our life and our death. So thank you for that question.
Okay, 2 more questions. Gentleman at the back in red and in the over there in the navy first. Name and area, please.
Gary Stewart, St Wands. My question's about AI. I think the first one of the night. It's coming, it's here. I work in the digital sector. So I think some of you tonight have said making more or doing more with less. So I want to get the views from the candidates, how you would use AI to do more with less in the government, and how would you sort of make sure Jersey is well positioned to make the most of this opportunity that's coming down the tracks?
Thank you.
Good evening. 2 parts.
Sorry, name and where you're from.
My apologies. Trevor Dallagher, St One.
Thank you.
Firstly, there's immense concern about the number of youngsters, young people, who are not turning out to vote. Can I make a suggestion? And I ask the panel, what do you propose doing to ensure that the dreadful outflow of youngsters leaving the island because they cannot afford property here, either to buy or to rent, what do you propose doing?
Okay, just specifically with property? Just specifically with property or just generally?
Property generally. I mean, people need somewhere to live. Youngsters need somewhere to live. They cannot afford the absurd rents. They cannot afford to buy property.
Okay, thank you.
And that something needs to be done. I'm asking the panel, what would they propose specifically to do to stop people leaving the island?
Okie dokie. So 2 questions. AI. How would you use AI to do more with less in government, and how can Jersey make the most of the opportunities of AI? And young people, how are we going to stop young people from leaving, particularly in the area of property, from leaving the island? And that's going to go first to Lucy.
Thank you, and thank you for the question, Gary. And I don't claim to be an expert in this area, so I will bow to those who are more experienced in this. But I think there's huge opportunities with AI. There are challenges as well. Government's working on a strategy with Digital Jersey at the moment and looking at how they can start to use AI. There's nervousness, I know that, within government, and some of that comes down to how government looks after its data. As individuals in the island, we want to make sure our data is protected and not out there to be perhaps harvested for other things. So I think that's something to be wary of. I'd welcome looking at the way forward. I'm sure there's going to be opportunities. It's not really my expertise to say what those are at this stage. On to the second question, where to start with it. I suppose my take on your question, if you don't mind, is that I like to see it another way, that actually it's not about keeping young people here. It's about letting people go off when they want to and enjoy the world and learn and experience, and then attracting them back to Jersey at a point in their lives when they want to come, usually, quite often, when they want to come and settle down in Jersey. And that does come down to housing and affordability. There's a quote that sticks with me at the moment that I like from Jacinda Ardern from New Zealand, which talks about everybody needing somewhere to work, somewhere to live, someone to love, and something to hope for. So it's about housing. It's about having a diverse and interesting job market for them to come back to. It's about building strong communities, welcoming their partners back if they've met them around the world as well, and then having some hope as well. Fort Regent, like we talked about, having some interesting things going on in Jersey where they want to live, making it a family-friendly place where they might want to come and bring up their children as well. Thank you.
Russell?
AI. Well, we have the slowest and most expensive planning application system, probably in the world. Just think what AI could do for that. Already in some countries, it's digitized. So I think that could be something very exciting. I hope we're on top of it. I note that it's all about education, of course, and I note that in Estonia, they introduced coding into primary schools coding lessons into primary schools, and they've been reaping the benefits ever since. I think AI is going to be very important in making our government smaller and more efficient, because at the moment it's the size and cost of it keep growing, and we've got to reverse that. And I think AI could be a very useful tool. Trevor, well, I was housing minister for 18 months, and I secured a record number of state-owned sites for housing. The La Barre Centre, St Saviour's Hospital, Kenneveigh School, and there was another couple in town. And then there was an election and a change of government, and most of those sites went to health, I think. I think the health minister had enough on his plate with doing phase 1 of the hospital, phase 2 of it in Kensington Place, and phase 3 of it apparently in Gloucester Street. And they should have let that St Saviour's Hospital site go. It was going to be a village development, mixed development, some health provision, perhaps a dementia care unit, some education provision. I'm disappointed that the government just doesn't seem to be able to stick to a plan, because supply is the most important thing we can do for our housing market and for our young people to try and get a house.
Well, first question, thank you. You're absolutely right, of course, that AI is coming whether we like it or not. Views on how we could use it to do more with less in government and to make sure that Jersey's well placed to make use of it. In part, I think that's a bit of a technical question that's beyond my own expertise. I understand that one area, for example, where it can make efficiencies is in software development, where if you know what you're doing and you're a competent developer, you can use it to greatly increase your own productivity. That in turn raises questions about training the next generation of software developers. So I think we do need clearly to both harness its power there and ensure that we are not pulling the ladder and preventing opportunities for younger people to develop the skills to be the next generation of people who will be able to supervise its output and use it effectively. I think it's important here also to say that it does have limitations, very considerable limitations and dangers as well. And where there is no case for AI at all is where we need human agency and where we need moral agency. We cannot abdicate our responsibility for making decisions. I'm not for a minute thinking you were suggesting this, because I realise you weren't. But I think it's an important point to make anyway. We must not abdicate our responsibility for making decisions, and moral decisions very often, to a large language model that works on stochastic probability and predicts the next word. Young people not coming back, or either in the short or long term after they've moved away, perhaps for education. Key thing is to offer support, particularly, as you say, with housing, and this is in fact in our reform manifesto, to develop a package of incentives, help with housing costs in particular, to make that less of a barrier to coming back.
Gareth. I went to a seminar about 2 years ago, I think, held at the Societe, and it was the Digital Jersey, head of Digital Jersey, who gave the seminar, explaining about AI, and he said, you have nothing to fear from it. The points about it, being very careful with it are quite correct, but we have nothing to fear from it. It's a tool which we can use. The problem, of course, is that AI is going to be taking a lot of the jobs in finance, the lower down jobs in finance, in government, and in secretarial jobs, because you can record a meeting on a machine, and then it will write the notes up. AI is really there to be used, but it is a tool. We mustn't forget it's a tool. Like a hammer is a tool, you bang a nail. AI is a tool that we can use. And the other thing is that as people lose opportunities for work because AI will replace them, then teaching them to use AI in other fields and in at Highlands, then hopefully we can gain a lot more. And that leads into the other question, because the question of housing and young people leaving the island is really very complicated. It's not simple. It's not simply down to the cost of the housing, because yet they can't afford the housing maybe because they can't get the right jobs, etc., etc. But if we reinvigorated our economy as we need to, get rid of the red tape and planning problems, then and train people at Highlands to get into those new jobs using AI, using new techniques, and blue-collar workers, of course, are safer than white-collar workers, then we can hopefully build up better incomes so that people can afford houses. Because at the moment, it's ever so difficult to afford a house over here. You know. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary, for your question. And you are the expert, so you should be up here. But I do support financial support for businesses like yours to invest in AI adoption. I believe this will help alleviate a lot of pressures. And we see it already, investment in care tech, for example, where family nursing is already using technology to monitor remotely their patients. So this is great for helping us reduce healthcare costs. In government, I think AI can be used in a lot of automated jobs for paperwork, for planning applications, and also to help with policy development research. The Time to Win document, which is published by Jersey Finance, really urges us to be on the forefront of using AI in the financial services industry. And I think those recommendations should be implemented. In terms of providing homes for our young people and graduates returning, I said in my opening speech I'm really in favour of multi-generational living and allowing parishioners and islanders to convert their spaces to welcome back graduates. I'm a supporter of the First Step scheme, and I think for graduates returning we could invest in a deposit scheme for those who want to get on the housing ladder. Our property portfolio is massive, and I think it's underutilised. There are about 500 properties, I believe, we own, to the tune of about £4 billion. And I think so we must be using our assets a little bit more creatively to see how we can provide more of that housing stock. Thank you.
We can have a quick whiz around the world. I think we should be looking to Singapore for a lot of guidance in many things that we do. Estonia too, I believe there have been visits to them and them to us. I don't know what the outcomes were, but they have this single portal where everyone there is able to talk to and deal with the government, and I think that is something that we should aspire to. Whether it's our library card or our health service, we should have a one-stop way of getting hold of government. We need a skilled workforce that can work with it, so obviously we're going to have a whole learning program, and my view is we need to engage Digital Jersey. I think that should be their function. They should devise the learning that's going to be needed by our younger workforce to adopt it and adopt it safely and productively. So I would like Digital Jersey to take that task on, although I'm sure they'll need assistance of others. In terms of the youth, I'm sort of with Lucy in terms of you have to let them go if they want to go. My son is virtually 30. I'm hoping one day he will come back. He will come back much better, brighter, and more productive and useful for this island. And when he gets to that stage in his life, then I believe he will want to be here. And that is the best thing. For others, we seem to be building lots of flats, but nobody seems to be thinking about where you go from there. And I've heard somebody recently saying we need to have properties which can expand during your life. So it's the right sized for when you're much younger, but as you grow and have a family and whatever, that site can expand with you. So I think some thinking along those lines is important. Gemma, your radical thing keeps coming back. Somebody has told me, well, why don't we look at the land prices themselves?
Sorry, Chris, I'm afraid your time is up. You can be radical later. We've got time just very quickly for 2 more questions. 2 more questions. Nobody wants to ask a question. Question here from the gentleman here. And you've already asked a question. Who's not asked a question? Gentleman here.
I'm Ken Vibert. For the last quarter of a century, successive states members have been well aware of the fact that the ageing population was a time bomb. Here we are, 25 years on, and apart from tinkering around the edges of it, nobody has come up with an answer to it. And I'm just wondering what the candidates feel is the answer.
What's the solution for an ageing population? Okay. Any more questions, first-timers? Lady here at the front, sorry.
My name's Maxine St. Wands. What I'd like to say is, from a personal point of view, I'm 72 with reduced mobility. I'm working 30 hours a week. Will these people here recommend looking again at not taxing the state's pension?
Okay, thank you. Right, so two clear questions. What would you do? What are the solutions for an ageing population? And also, would you consider not taxing the state's pension? And that will go first to Russell.
Okay, I must first apologise and answer your question because I ran out of time and I didn't want you to think I was ducking it. I did vote in favour of the assisted dying bill when it first came to the Assembly, I think in 2018, because of what I've witnessed in my life. Well, we have to have an economy, Ken, that supports looking after our ageing population. And the brakes were slightly put on our economy some years back for good reasons in terms of stopping immigration. So we need to grow the economy in the right way that doesn't increase immigration to the extent that that's inflationary and feeds the housing problem. And I support raising the threshold at which pensioners start paying the tax, taking many of them out of that tax bracket on the Jersey old age pension. That's what I would support.
Thank you very much for the questions. First question on ageing society. There are 2 sides to this, I think. One is an ageing society in which we have something in common with the rest of the developed world, and the other is some Jersey-specific aspects of that, in that we have this problem to a rather greater degree than parts of the Western world. The long-term care scheme is part of the answer to this. It isn't in a very healthy position financially, and that's something we need to look at. I personally also think we should look at off-island groups buying up care homes and see whether there is potential for bringing more of those into either local or perhaps even public ownership, because if they can currently run at a profit, they could be returning money to the Treasury or charging lower fees. There is the other side of the problem, if you say it's a problem, which it is in many ways, is the decrease in the working age population and the corresponding increase in the dependency ratio. And that, I think, is part of an economic shift that is going to also be impacted by increasing AI. And it's hard to know exactly what that's going to look like for the Western world as a whole over the next 4-10 years. We'll have to feel our way forward with that as we go. Sorry, I'm going to nearly run out of time. You were an example of someone who's working well past retirement age, and I think we should perhaps look at particular tax breaks for that group of people, particularly those who are not in extremely well-paid employment. It would cost £20 million to not tax anyone on the pension. That would give benefit, amongst others, to some very wealthy pensioners. I think we should target things better than that, more at those who need it. And we have said in our manifesto we would increase the pensioners' tax allowance. which provides something for lesser benefit
Thank
than
you,
removing
Helen.
tax
Sorry,
completely.
you are out of time. Thank you.
Ken, on the ageing population, I did say in my opening speech that it is a problem that is looming, and it's looming very fast, and we can all see it happening. The only one way to deal with it is that we try and encourage everyone to be healthier from a much earlier age, not just once they're coming towards retirement. If we can have more activity, more sport. As a director of the National Park, I'd like to see far more people walking it, getting out. We have organised walks and other events, and it just as if we are healthier, then we will be, obviously. It'll be less expensive to keep us in the future, but it is a massive looming problem. And of course, carers are... I also said that we don't look after our in-family carers, and we don't. But to try and get carers into the island is very difficult. Local people don't very often want to be carers. I don't mean family members, I mean as a career. And we're bringing carers in from all over the world. But it is a massive problem. By only keeping ourselves more healthy can we try and avoid the problem, which is looming very, very quickly. On the tax, I have to be consistent. When we were in St. Peter's, we were asked the same question, and I said, yes, we do need to look at it, because it does seem iniquitous that one has paid tax on your income and then you pay tax on your pension as well. So there is something quite wrong there, and I think we do need to look at it.
Thank you for your question on the ageing population, and I do understand the economics around having to pay for or the funds that we need in order to support an ageing population. But I don't want to sound negative about an ageing population, because so many of you here, the demographic, are a testament to the well-being and what you offer to our communities, and that's really important, that we continue to support the autonomy, to give you the services that you need, and to give back to our younger people, because what you've gone through, we need to pass on to the next generation. Also there's a report called The Island of Longevity, which is really interesting, because there are many cultures around the world that have this kind of thinking, and I would really like to see the recommendations from that report come into the island, which really celebrates the older generation. The next question was about, Maxine. Yes, Maxine. It's nice to see you, Maxine. I normally see you over at the shop, and I know that you are very hardworking, and I do appreciate what you do for our community. And absolutely, people that have to work very hard to save their pensions. And I have a mother in the same situation. And so when it comes to the taxation issues, I've looked at that and understood the economics behind it. And I really do feel that we need to raise that tax threshold for pensioners. And I agree with Helen, any support needs to be targeted.
Time's up. Thank you.
Ken, as you say, it's been a long time coming and won't get resolved this evening. I think one radical thought, Gemma, is we've got a 2019 tax bill that's been locked down and is outstanding for about 20,000 people. I would not like to see that money go into general cash flow of the government. I think that's a sum of money that could be set aside once paid by all the people over the, I think it's 17 years that the government wants it repaid, and invested in order to try and compensate for that mismatch between employers and employees at a future date. I think also if you've paid in and you're up to retirement age, we should look at the whole social security system as to why are you continuing to pay social security and your employer, because we want an incentive for people to work longer. But to Arlene's point about using the experience of people who've got to 65 or older, or 67 even at my age. In terms of the pension, I guess, like David, I have to be consistent. I don't see it as affordable at the moment. What I didn't get a chance to say at St Peter's, though, is I think the whole taxing of pension and long-term care need to be looked at in the round, because the two issues effectively are affecting the same part of the population. But as to Helen's point, we can't give a tax break to people who don't need it. And so it would have to be much more targeted than a blanket waiving of tax on the pension is how I would view it. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Ken, and I would follow on from what Arlene had said about how we value our ageing population. And I've spoken to a number of people who have actually been uncomfortable with sometimes being made to feel like they're the problem in all of this. We're all getting older. We're all going to be the ageing population at some point. So I suppose I'm be mindful of the language that we use, but it is a demographic challenge. We can't get away from that. My manifesto, I commit to supporting Jersey's Ageing Well roadmap, which promotes independence, social inclusion, and enabling islanders to make informed and supported choices as they get older. I also commit to the Island of Longevity report and seeing how we can take that forward politically as well. And it also links to the thing I mentioned earlier around our birth rate. And actually, if we're looking at it in the whole, it's how we look at it as the demographic challenges we've got at both ends of the spectrum and how we make sure that we've got a sustainable population for the future. Maxine, on your question, again, I'll be consistent with the answer I've given a number of times before, and it's that I think I would also support the reintroduction, because it did used to exist, of a higher tax exemption rate for pensioners, particularly at the moment with cost of living being such a challenge. When you're on a fixed income and some pensions have not kept up with inflation in the past, I think it's particularly important.
That's it. That's all we've got time for. Thank you so much. Thanks for all your questions. Thank you to Emelita for passing around the microphone. To our broadcast partners, 3CI over there, for the Parish, of course, of St One, and of course for the candidates for all their answers. If you would like to get in touch with all the candidates, you will find their contact details on the vote.je website, and obviously the manifesto booklets as well are on there. Digitally, you should have had those through your door. In addition to your 3 deputies, you'll be able to vote, of course, for the 9 senatorial candidates and 1 Conor-Tarbh. If you applied for a postal vote, remember your ballot papers must be received by midday on election day, which is this Sunday, the 7th of June, by the judicial greffe. Polling stations are open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. If you're voting in person, please make sure you bring photographic ID with you. There is automatic voter registration this year. If you are at all concerned, there's a facility on the vote.je website homepage where you can digitally check if you are registered, or you can ask your parish. And just a reminder, the final hustings of the year is the senatorial hustings tomorrow, which is for St Helier candidates, which will, St Helier residents, which is taking place at the Radisson Blue waterfront, and that will have a British Sign Language interpreter attending. Thank you very much. If you need anything, just go to the vote.je website. Thank you.
And thank you too to you. Yeah, on behalf of all the candidates, thank you very much, Gwen, for moderating. And Richard and your staff, thank you for hosting us. Well, the recruitment process for this job isn't a simple one. It's tough, but it's been an honour and a privilege to share the panel here, the table, with these 5 candidates. We all get on, and we've had a good time. They're a smashing bunch, so good luck to you all. And once again, thanks so much for coming out in force, St One, and see you on the 7th.